My mother's mockery echoed in my mind as she assigned me to room 108, the worst in the hotel. Little did she know that by dinner, I would unravel their web of lies and reveal myself as the rightful heir to my grandfather's entire empire. Every family harbors secrets, but I never conceived that ours would be concealed within the opulent, gilded walls of a five-star luxury hotel. For my entire life, I had existed as a mere shadow, perpetually eclipsed by my perfect sister, Sophia, the one who bathed in praise while I was handed scraps of pity and endured a wall of silence. But this year, during our annual family reunion, the entire dynamic was destined to change. None of them had the faintest idea that the very ground they walked on, this dazzling, sprawling hotel, was already mine. And on this night, a truth buried for decades would erupt, forcing every single one of us to confront the past. I had resolved to remain silent, to simply observe the yearly ritual of our family gathering. My mother insisted on maintaining the tradition, but for me, it had always been a weekend marathon of relentless comparisons and biting, scathing remarks. This year promised more of the same, with one monumental exception. The magnificent hotel where we convened had become my personal property, a secret inheritance bequeathed to me by my grandfather 6 months prior. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I stepped into the grand lobby of the Hotel Miramar. I watched as my family, one by one, greeted my sister Sophia, the universally adored favorite, with effusive hugs and beaming smiles. I went unnoticed until my mother finally caught sight of me, her face twisting into a grimace of disappointment. "I honestly thought you wouldn't make it, Elise," she remarked, her tone making no effort to conceal her displeasure. "I wouldn't miss our family reunion for the world," I responded, forcing a smile that felt foreign and failed to reach my eyes. My brother-in-law, Sophia's husband Marco, gave me a dismissive once-over, his eyes appraising my simple attire as he always did. My modest graphic design company had evolved into a respected agency with a roster of international clients, but I had long ago stopped trying to correct their deeply ingrained, hurtful preconceptions. "It seems the graphic design world isn't as lucrative as you'd hoped," he commented with a cynical, condescending smirk. This five-star hotel, with its meticulously manicured gardens and breathtaking ocean vistas, was now mine. My grandfather had always perceived a quality in me that the rest of my family deliberately chose to ignore. "Let's distribute the rooms," my mother announced as Andreas, the hotel manager, began handing out the key cards. My sister and her husband were awarded the presidential suite, complete with a panoramic ocean view. My parents received a lavish executive suite, and my cousins were given deluxe rooms. Then my mother turned to me. "Elise, you will be in room 108 on the first floor." She paused for effect. "It's the one right next to the laundry room, the smallest and loudest room in the hotel." A ripple of exchanged glances went through the family. Some showed a flicker of shame, others poorly disguised amusement. Andreas, the manager, looked visibly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, perhaps we could find another option for the young lady," he started to say, but my mother cut him off sharply. "That won't be necessary. Elise is simple. She has no need for luxuries." I caught Andreas's worried gaze. He knew exactly who I was, but we had agreed to maintain the secrecy of my ownership during this family reunion. "It's perfectly fine, Andreas," I said, my voice calm and even. Room 108 will be just perfect. I took the key and walked toward the elevator, feeling the weight of my family's collective gaze on my back. As I passed, my cousin Valeria whispered, "As always, Elise settling for the leftovers." The room was precisely as I remembered from a staff tour. Modest, with a small window overlooking the service area, the constant hum and clatter of the laundry machines a persistent soundtrack. I sat on the edge of the single bed and took a long, deep breath. During the welcome dinner in the hotel's fine dining restaurant, my family occupied the best table in the house. My designated chair was awkwardly positioned, partially obscured behind a large marble column. I wasn't there to start a confrontation or to humiliate my family by revealing my ownership. My purpose was singular, to understand why after 30 years they treated me with such profound disdain. While everyone else ordered the most extravagant dishes on the menu, I chose a simple garden salad. "Can't you afford something better, Elise?" my father asked, his tone a nauseating blend of mockery and pity. "We can treat you if you like." "The salad is fine, thank you," I replied, clinging to my dignity. The conversation, as it always did, revolved around Sophia's many achievements. Her recent promotion at the bank, her new house in an exclusive neighborhood. "Our Sophia always knew exactly what she wanted," my mother declared with pride. Unlike Elise, who wasted her life on that little drawing business. The head chef, Matteo, approached our table to personally greet the guests. When he saw me, he offered a small, respectful bow that did not go unnoticed. "Was the salad to your liking, Miss Elise?" he asked with genuine deference. "It was delicious, Matteo, thank you," I replied warmly. My family stared at me, their expressions a mix of confusion and suspicion. "You know the chef?" Sophia inquired, her shock evident. "We've crossed paths," I answered vaguely. The truth was, I had personally hired Matteo 3 months ago, shortly after my grandfather's will had been executed. As the night wore on, the insults directed at me became sharper, more cutting. The secret I harbored felt heavier with each passing moment. Should I reveal the truth? How would they react if they knew that every insult, every act of humiliation was taking place under my own roof? Andreas approached our table discreetly. "Miss Elise, there is an urgent matter that requires your attention," he said in a low voice. "What could possibly be so urgent for Elise?" Marco scoffed loudly. "Did the hotel run out of colored pencils?" I stood up calmly, ignoring his jibe. "Excuse me." "I'll be back in a moment." In the privacy of a small office, Andreas looked genuinely distressed. "Miss, I cannot continue to stand by and watch how they treat you. You own this entire place." "I know, Andreas, but I need to understand something before I reveal the truth. There's a deep family wound that has been festering for a very long time." I gazed out the window at the dark, restless sea. And I think I'm very close to discovering why my family despises me so much. I returned to the table, where my family was indulging in exclusive, decadent desserts. My cousin Diego was boasting about his recent purchase of a sports car when my Aunt Teresa, always the most perceptive, remarked, "What did that employee want with you, Elise? Do you know him from somewhere?" I felt every eye at the table fix upon me. "Just a minor confusion with the reservation," I replied casually, taking a slow sip of water. Sophia leaned over and mumbled to Marco, just loudly enough for me to hear. "She's always causing some kind of trouble." That night, as everyone else retired to their sumptuous suites, I remained in the vast, empty lobby. Andreas approached me with a steaming cup of tea. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," he whispered gently. "Don Alejandro always knew you would be the one to best care for his legacy." I offered a melancholic smile. "My grandfather was the only one who ever saw anything special in me." Andreas shook his head firmly. "In the few months you've been in charge, you've implemented more positive improvements than any previous owner. The staff respects you immensely. Don Alejandro was not mistaken." The next day at the breakfast buffet, I noticed several staff members greeting me with a disguised reverence. My family was far too engrossed in piling their plates with the most exclusive delicacies to take any notice. "Elise, is that all you're eating?" my mother asked, her eyes scanning my modest plate of fruit and yogurt. "That's why you're so thin, you look sickly." "I'm perfectly healthy, Mom," I responded evenly. "I just prefer to start the day with something light." Marco erupted in laughter. "Light? More like economical. I bet you have to track every single penny you spend." The comment drew a few chuckles from around the table. I took a deep breath and focused on my breakfast. It wasn't yet time for the grand revelation. The morning was a blur of scheduled activities, a guided tour of the hotel, time by the infinity pool, and treatments at the spa. Naturally, my parents had orchestrated everything to ensure Sophia and her husband received the most luxurious treatments available. For me, there were only leftovers. "I'm so sorry, dear, but it seems there's no more availability for the premium massage," my mother informed me with feigned disappointment. "You'll have to settle for a basic one." I later learned that she had deliberately canceled my reservation for the premium treatment, arguing that it would be a waste on Elise. During lunch, the conversation inevitably shifted to grandfather Alejandro's inheritance. "I can never understand why Dad sold the hotel just before he passed," my mother mused, gazing around the opulent dining room nostalgically. "It was his greatest pride," my father added. "He must have received an offer he couldn't refuse. It's a shame we never found out who bought it." Sophia sighed dramatically. "If we still owned the hotel, we could stay here for free whenever we wanted." She glanced at me. "We could even offer Elise a decent room," she said, as if bestowing a great favor upon me. I had to restrain a smile. If only they knew the truth about the bequest and the profound family mystery I was on the verge of uncovering. That afternoon, while my parents and Sophia were on a private yacht cruise, I made my way to my grandfather's old office, which now served as my private workspace. Andreas was waiting for me with a large, dusty box of documents. "I found what you requested, Miss Elise," he said, placing the box on the grand mahogany desk. "These are your grandfather's personal records pertaining to your family." I began to sift through old letters, photographs, and journals. Among them, I discovered a yellowed envelope postmarked 15 years ago. It contained a letter from my mother to my grandfather that made my blood run cold. "Dad, you have to understand that Elise is not like the rest of us. She never has been. If you continue to treat her as your favorite, you will only set her up for disappointment. She simply lacks the qualities necessary to thrive in this family. Sophia is the one who should inherit the hotel someday." My hands were shaking. I continued reading, finding similar letters spanning years. Letters in which my own mother systematically tried to convince my grandfather that I was unworthy of his attention, his love, or his fortune. She detailed my supposed failings and weaknesses in cruel detail. Tucked away was a handwritten draft of a reply from my grandfather, one he never sent. "Linda," it read, It pains me to see how you treat your own child. Elise possesses a spirit and an intelligence that you are blind to. Someday, you will all realize your grave mistake. The discovery hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just simple envy or sibling rivalry. My mother had actively orchestrated my marginalization within the family. "Are you all right, miss?" Andreas asked, his voice laced with concern. "No," I responded honestly, "but I will be." I kept reading and found something even more disturbing. My father and Marco had attempted to pressure my grandfather into selling the hotel to them at a drastically reduced price shortly before his death. Their scheme had failed only because my grandfather, growing suspicious of their true intentions, had decided to secretly leave everything to me instead. A sharp knock on the door interrupted my investigation. It was my cousin, Valeria. "Elise, what are you doing in here?" "This area is for authorized personnel only," she said, her eyes curiously scanning the documents scattered across the desk. Andreas responded quickly. "The young lady was simply looking for some information on the hotel's daily activities, Miss Valeria." Valeria didn't look convinced. Her gaze sharpened as she examined the office more closely. "Isn't it strange that they'd let you into the private office? They wouldn't even let us peek inside." "Maybe I'm not as insignificant as everyone believes," I said, holding her gaze. Something shifted in her expression. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt, of reconsideration in her eyes. "You were always grandfather's favorite," she said softly. "We all knew it, but no one dared to say it aloud." When Valeria left, I knew my secret wouldn't last much longer. The family would start to suspect, and I would have to make a choice. The gala dinner was the centerpiece of our family reunion. It was also the moment the storm that had been brewing since my arrival finally broke, bringing with it an opportunity for a kind of justice I never knew I wanted. I had to decide between enduring further humiliation or revealing that I, the despised Elise, was now the owner of the very empire they all coveted. The hotel's main ballroom had been exquisitely decorated with fresh flowers, shimmering candles, and fine crystal. I arrived deliberately late, wearing a simple but elegant black dress I had designed myself. "Finally, you decide to show up," my mother remarked irritably. "We were about to order without you." I took my assigned seat at the least advantageous spot at the table. Marco was already half intoxicated, boasting loudly about his latest real estate ventures. "I bought 3 properties on the coast last month. If I play my cards right, I could even buy a hotel like this someday." Sophia beamed at him. "My husband has a real vision for business, unlike other family members who are content with just drawing little logos." My father raised his glass. "To Marco and Sophia, the true pride of this family." Everyone toasted enthusiastically while I left my glass on the table. No one seemed to notice. During the first course, Valeria watched me intently. Finally, she spoke up. "Elise, I saw you in the hotel's private office today. You seemed very comfortable in there." A sudden, heavy silence fell over the table. All eyes turned to me. "What were you doing in a restricted area?" my father demanded, his brow furrowed. I took a calm sip of water. "I was looking into a few things about the hotel's history." "Why on earth would you do that?" my mother asked. "It's not like you're planning to buy one." Marco let out a booming laugh. "Elise owning a hotel, that's the funniest thing I've heard all year. She can't even afford a decent room." Just then, Andreas approached our table with a bottle of vintage champagne. "Miss Elise, the champagne you ordered for your family," he announced clearly. My mother blinked in surprise. We didn't order any champagne. It's complimentary, Andreas added with a knowing look in my direction. From me, I said calmly. From you? Sophia nearly choked on her wine. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife as Andreas served the champagne. There are many things about me that you don't know, I said simply. My father looked at me with open suspicion. What are you talking about, Elise? If you have something to say, then say it. I weighed my options. I could reveal everything right now, but I didn't want to be like them. I replied that I simply wanted to make a kind gesture to celebrate the fact that we were all still together as a family, despite the years of humiliation they had subjected me to. Their expressions of pure shock were palpable. They never expected generosity from me after the way they had treated me. The dinner continued, but a subtle shift had occurred. Valeria looked at me with genuine intrigue, as if seeing me for the first time. During dessert, Sophia brought up grandfather's inheritance again. I'll never understand why grandfather sold the hotel so secretly. It was the family's patrimony. Maybe he knew some people would try to take advantage of it, I responded, looking directly at my father and Marco. What are you trying to insinuate? Marco shot back, instantly defensive. Nothing at all, I said gently. Just that grandfather was a much shrewder man than anyone gave him credit for. My father was now looking at me with a mixture of suspicion and nervousness. Elise, if you know something about the sale of this hotel, you should share it with the family. So now I'm part of the family, I mused aloud. A few hours ago, I was just the poor relative who didn't even deserve a decent room. An uncomfortable silence descended. My mother tried to change the subject, but I pressed on. You know, grandfather told me many things. I spent hours with him while the rest of you were busy with your important lives. He told me about his plans for the hotel, about what he truly wanted for his legacy. And what did he say? Sophia asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. He told me that a family business is like a mirror. It reflects the values of the people who run it. Marco slammed his fist on the table. Enough with the riddles. If you have something to say it clearly. At that precise moment, the hotel's general manager approached our table, apologizing for the interruption. I just wanted to make sure everything was to your satisfaction, especially for you, Miss Elise. The preferential treatment I was receiving was clearly making my family uneasy. Everything is perfect, Diego. Thank you, I replied with a smile. My father could no longer contain himself. Why does everyone here treat you like you're someone important? I took a deep breath. I hadn't planned to reveal my secret this night, but the situation was escalating. I had to make a decision. They know my work, I replied simply, and they respect what I do. Drawing logos, Marco mocked. I design corporate identities for international companies, I corrected him calmly. My agency has 30 employees and clients on 3 continents. Our revenue last year exceeded $3 million. The statement landed with the force of a physical blow. My mother nearly dropped her wine glass. You're lying, Sophia stammered. If you were that successful, you would have bragged about it. Unlike some people, I responded, my voice steady, I don't require constant validation from others, and there's a profound difference between humility and allowing myself to be treated like dirt. If you're so successful, then why did you accept staying in that horrible room? My mother asked, genuinely bewildered. Because, I replied honestly, I wanted to see if there was any limit to your contempt for me. My words hung in the air like heavy weights. For the very first time, I saw genuine shame flicker across some of their faces. Not all of them, but it was a start. "Elise," my father began, but I cut him off. "I'm not finished," I said firmly. "For years, I have endured your condescending comments, your pitying glances, and your constant disdain, all because I chose a path you didn't consider appropriate." My hands were trembling slightly, but my voice remained strong, as if decades of suppressed words were finally finding their release. "Grandfather taught me that a person's true worth is measured by how they treat others, not by what they own or how they appear. He saw something in me that you were all incapable of seeing, because you were too busy comparing me to your narrow ideal of success." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see a torrent of emotions crossing their faces: disbelief, shame, confusion, and in some, the dawn of an uncomfortable realization. "If this is true," my father finally said, his voice strained, "why didn't you say anything before? Would you have listened?" I asked pointedly. "Or would you have found some other way to diminish my accomplishments?" He had no answer for that. We all knew the truth. The dinner concluded in a tense, uncomfortable silence. As the others dispersed, Valeria lingered behind and sat beside me. "I always knew you were different," she whispered gently. "I just never understood why until tonight." Our eyes met in a moment of newfound understanding. "Elise," she continued, "there's something more, isn't there? Something about this hotel and grandfather that you still haven't said." I nodded slowly, knowing that the full truth would soon come to light for everyone. The next morning at breakfast, the atmosphere had subtly changed. My family watched me with a mixture of confusion and cautious curiosity. From my modest room next to the laundry, I could hear the hum of the machines blending with the morning bird song. I dressed with care, choosing an ivory-tailored suit I had saved for a special occasion. Today would undoubtedly be an occasion none of us would ever forget. My revelation the previous night had shaken the foundations of our family hierarchy, but they still did not know the whole truth. My mother was the first to approach me, her smile tense. "Elise, dear, we had no idea your business was doing so well. You should have told us." "I tried," I said, my voice calm, devoid of bitterness. "For years, every time I mentioned a new client or an important project, you would change the subject to talk about Sophia's latest accomplishment." My sister blushed deeply. My father intervened, adopting a conciliatory tone I had never heard him use with me before. "We're proud of you, of course." Marco, however, remained skeptical. "That's an impressive number if it's true," he said, emphasizing the last part. "Of course, revenue isn't the same as profit. My profit margin last year was 28%. After taxes," I responded without missing a beat. His expression shifted from skepticism to surprise and then almost to respect. At 10 o'clock sharp, Andreas approached our table. "Miss Elise, everything is ready for the meeting you requested." My family looked at me with renewed suspicion. "I've arranged a brief presentation about the history of the hotel," I explained as I stood up. "I thought it might be interesting for you, since it was so important to grandfather." In the main conference room, an elegant space with large windows offering panoramic ocean views, my grandfather's lawyer, Ricardo Mendez, was waiting. I was surprised to see not only the hotel's senior management team present, but also Mr. Mendez. "What is the meaning of this, Elise?" my father asked, a note of alarm in his voice. "Please take a seat," I indicated, gesturing to the front row of chairs. Once everyone was settled, I stood before them. My heart was racing, but my voice was steady. "As you all know, this hotel was the crown jewel of Grandfather Alejandro's business empire. He built it from the ground up, transforming a small inn into one of the most prestigious establishments on the entire coast. I turned on a projector, which displayed old photographs of the hotel in its early days. My family watched with a mix of nostalgia and confusion. "What you may not know," I continued, "is what really happened to the hotel after his death." My mother tensed visibly. "Grandfather sold the hotel before he died. We just never knew to whom." "That is not entirely accurate," Lawyer Mendez interjected, standing beside me. "Don Alejandro did not sell the hotel. He transferred ownership to a private trust." "A trust?" my father repeated, frowning. "Why were we not informed?" "Because it was not legally relevant to you," Mendez explained with professional coolness. "The trust had a single, sole beneficiary." All eyes swiveled to me. I could see the pieces clicking together in their minds. "It can't be," Sophia muttered under her breath. I nodded slowly. "Grandfather left the hotel to me. I have been the legal owner for the past 6 months." The silence that followed was absolute, as if the air itself had frozen. The reactions ranged from stunned disbelief to simmering fury. Marco was the first to find his voice. "This is ludicrous. Why would he leave his most prized asset to you?" "That's an excellent question," I said, looking directly at my parents. "And I believe Mom might have an idea." My mother turned deathly pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "I found your letters, Mom. The ones you sent to Grandfather for years, trying to convince him that I was unworthy of his attention or his inheritance." Several gasps echoed around the room. My mother seemed to shrink in her chair. "I also found something else," I continued, signaling to Andreas, who distributed folders to each family member. "These documents detail an attempt by Dad and Marco to coerce Grandfather into selling them the hotel at a fraction of its value, shortly before he passed away." My father opened his folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of emails, falsified acquisition proposals, and fraudulent property valuations. This is taken out of context," he stammered. "No, it is not," Lawyer Mendez stepped in. "Don Alejandro provided me with this documentation himself. That was when he made the final decision to change his will and leave the hotel to Elise, the only person he knew he could trust to protect his legacy." Marco leaped to his feet, his face flushed with rage. "This is a conspiracy. You must have manipulated him, you and the lawyer. You don't have the qualifications to run a business like this." "The data suggests otherwise," I responded calmly. "In the 6 months since I took over, the hotel's revenue has increased by 18%. Customer satisfaction scores are at an all-time high, and we have been nominated for 2 major hospitality excellence awards." Andreas and the management team nodded in confirmation, their faces beaming with pride. My mother looked genuinely perplexed. "If you are the owner, why did you agree to stay in that awful room? Why did you let us treat you that way?" It was the question I had been waiting for. "Because I needed to understand," I replied, my voice cracking slightly with emotion. "I needed to know if you truly saw me as worthless or if there was a deeper reason for your contempt." The tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. "And what I discovered was more painful than I ever imagined. It wasn't that you thought I had no value. You were terrified of what would happen if others, especially Grandfather, recognized my value." My mother's gaze dropped to the floor, unable to meet mine. "The letters are clear, Mom. You couldn't stand the fact that Grandfather loved me. You couldn't accept that he saw something special in me. Why? What did I ever do to deserve that?" The ensuing silence was broken by a choked sob. My mother seemed to collapse under the weight of decades of her own deception. "You were just like him," she finally whispered. "You have his eyes, his way of seeing the world. When you were a little girl, he used to say you were his living image, that you had his spirit for business." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "And I was always a disappointment to him. I was never smart enough, never ambitious enough. When you came along, with all your creativity and determination, I saw how his eyes lit up when he talked to you, in a way they never did with me." The confession hung in the room like a physical entity. Decades of resentment, all born from maternal jealousy and an unspoken competition. "So you decided to make sure I never had a chance to shine," I concluded, a wave of profound sadness washing over me. "You convinced our entire family that I was inferior, that my dreams were worthless." My mother didn't deny it. She couldn't. "And you," I said, turning to my father. "You saw a business opportunity. If I was kept isolated from the family, I wouldn't be a threat to your plans for the hotel." My father looked as though he had aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. Sophia, meanwhile, remained silent, her face a mask as she processed everything she had just learned about the foundations of our family. That was when I made the most important decision of my life. "Despite everything," I said, my voice breaking the oppressive quiet, "I am still a member of this family." My words seemed to float in the air, surprising and unsettling everyone. "We are not here to settle scores," I continued. "I could have embarrassed you from the moment you arrived. I could have kicked you out of this hotel or treated you with the same contempt you've shown me. But that would only perpetuate the cycle of resentment that has poisoned this family for far too long." My mother looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed, a mixture of guilt and bewilderment on her face. "I never fully understood why grandfather left me this hotel. Now I do. It wasn't just about business. It was about giving us a chance to heal." I walked to the room's large window and looked out at the ocean stretching to the horizon, the same view my grandfather had cherished every morning from this very office. "Grandfather left something else in the trust," I announced, turning to face them. "A letter to be read to the family 6 months after I took possession of the hotel. That day is today." Lawyer Mendez nodded and retrieved a sealed envelope from his briefcase. He handed it to me with a solemn expression. "Don Alejandro's final wish goes beyond legal matters," Mendez stated. "He specifically requested it be read in front of the entire family." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. I unfolded the pages, covered in my grandfather's distinctive, elegant handwriting, and began to read aloud. "My dearest family, if you are hearing these words, it means Elise has assumed her rightful place as the owner of the Hotel Miramar, and the time has come for you to understand my true motivations. This hotel is my legacy, yes, but a legacy is more than just buildings and balance sheets. A legacy is the values we pass down through generations. For years, I watched with a heavy heart as our family fractured. I saw the disdain directed at Elise, the very one who, ironically, is most like me in spirit and vision. Linda, my dear daughter, I saw you trying to prove your worth to me by competing with your own child. It was never necessary. I loved you for who you were, not for who you thought you needed to be. Marco and Sophia, I saw you build your lives on a foundation of appearances and superficial achievements. True success is not measured in possessions or prestige, but in the integrity with which we live our lives. I left the hotel to Elise not only because I trust her business acumen, but because I trust her heart to heal the wounds in our family. My final wish is for you to use this moment of revelation to reflect, to acknowledge past wrongs, and to build a future where mutual respect replaces resentment, where family love triumphs over individual ambition. The hotel is legally Elise's, but in spirit it belongs to all of you if you are willing to build a new family dynamic based on respect and acceptance. With eternal love, Alejandro. When I finished reading, there were tears in the eyes of several people in the room, including some of the hotel's staff. The silence that followed was thick with emotion, with dawning realization, and with long overdue truths. My mother was the first to speak, her voice a mere whisper. All this time, I was competing with my own daughter, trying to prove something to a father who already loved me. She rose slowly and took a hesitant step toward me. Elise, I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I was a terrible mother, blinded by my own insecurities. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before, genuine recognition, vulnerability, and the beginning of a profound remorse. My father, meanwhile, looked utterly broken. Your grandfather was right, he conceded, almost to himself. I spent my whole life chasing the approval of others, and I lost sight of what was truly important. Sophia remained seated, her face unreadable. Finally, she stood and walked towards me. I never understood why grandfather seemed to prefer you, she said softly. Now I see. While I was seeking his approval, you were seeking his wisdom. While I wanted his money, you wanted his legacy. Her voice was filled with sorrow and acceptance, not bitterness. Marco, however, was unmoved. He stood up abruptly, his face contorted with anger. So I suppose now we're all supposed to feel guilty and congratulate you for inheriting an empire you didn't even build, he sneered, looking to Sophia for support. But she remained by my side. Marco, I said calmly, the hotel is legally mine. That will not change. But what we do from this point forward as a family is up to all of us. Actually, Lawyer Mendez interjected quietly, there is one additional codicil we have not yet discussed. We all turned to look at him, stunned. Don Alejandro stipulated that Elise would have the discretion to grant minority shares in the hotel to other family members, should they demonstrate a true commitment to the values he championed. The revelation landed like a second bombshell. My family stared at me with a mixture of hope and trepidation. I am not looking for civility in exchange for shares, I clarified. What grandfather wanted was a genuine reconciliation, not one motivated by financial gain. So what do you propose? My father asked, his tone suggesting he was finally ready to listen. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to transform pain into something constructive. I propose we start with the truth. We are a dysfunctional family, and we have caused each other immense harm. We cannot change the past, but we can choose our future. I paused, looking each of them in the eye. The hotel will remain under my management, but I am willing to create a family council, not for operational decisions, but a place where everyone has a voice to ensure grandfather's legacy continues through philanthropy, community outreach, and the principles he held so dear. And the shares? Marco asked, still suspicious. Those will be earned over time, I stated firmly. Not through flattery, but through actions that prove you have truly understood grandfather's message. My mother stepped forward, and with some hesitation, took my hands in hers. I don't deserve a second chance, she whispered, tears now streaming freely down her face. But if you are willing to give me one, I promise I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the mother I should have been. I felt my own tears welling up. Years of longing for a mother's love, I never had were culminating in this single moment of shared vulnerability. "That's all I ever wanted, Mom," I said softly. My father joined us, and then Sophia. Marco remained apart, watching the scene with a mixture of confusion and resentment. "I need some time to process all of this," he finally muttered, turning toward the door. "Take all the time you need," I said. "The door will be open when you're ready." After Marco left, the energy in the room shifted. It was as if a great, unseen weight had been lifted, allowing us to breathe freely for the first time in decades. The hotel staff, who had witnessed the entire scene, looked deeply moved. Andreas began subtly signaling for them to leave us to our private family moment. When it was just us and lawyer Mendez, Sophia asked, "So what do we do now? How do we even begin to repair so much damage?" "With honesty," I replied. "Grandfather used to say that family wounds only heal when you let the air get to them. We've kept ours in the dark for far too long." My dad gave a small, sad nod. "You have his wisdom, Elise, you always did." Mendez stood and picked up his briefcase. "My work here is done." "Don Alejandro would be very proud of how you've handled this, Elise." As he reached the door, he turned back. "By the way, there is one more box of your grandfather's personal effects at my office. His diaries from the years he was building the hotel. He said you would be particularly interested in them." After Mendez left, my family and I remained in the room, enveloped in a silence that, for the first time, felt peaceful rather than strained. "I never once asked you about your business," my mother said abruptly. $3 million in revenue, 30 employees. You must be very good at what you do." I smiled faintly. I'd love to show you my work sometime." "I'd like that very much," she said, with a sincerity I had never heard in her voice before. Sophia, always the pragmatist, interjected. "So what happens with the rest of the family weekend? Do we just continue with the planned activities?" I took a moment to consider. "I think so, but with a few changes. For starters, I'll be moving into the suite that belongs to the owner." "And what should we do about Marco?" my father asked. "Give him space," I said. "Some people need more time than others to accept the truth." That night, as the staff moved my belongings into the hotel's magnificent main suite, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. There was victory, yes, but not the petty triumph of revenge. It was the deeper, more meaningful victory of breaking a toxic cycle. From my private terrace, I looked out at the same vast ocean my grandfather had loved. The salt-tinged wind caressed my face, carrying with it the scent of new beginnings. "You were right, grandfather," I whispered to the wind. "True power isn't about humiliating those who hurt you. It's about giving them the chance to change." I remembered something my grandfather once told me. "Elise, a hotel is just like a family. Every room is different. Every guest brings their own story. The secret is to make each one feel valued, not in spite of their differences, but because of them." For the first time in my life, I felt that our family had a chance to become the kind of place my grandfather had envisioned. A place where everyone could find their own space, yet still feel part of something bigger. The road ahead would be long and likely difficult. Some wounds might take years to fully heal if they ever did. But we had taken the first, and most important, step. We had looked the truth in the eye, and we had decided not to turn away. Epilogue: 1 year has passed since that world-altering family reunion. The Hotel Miramar is thriving under my direction, with new initiatives grandfather would have loved. A scholarship program for local youth, new accessibility features in our rooms, and a deep commitment to environmental sustainability. My relationship with my family has transformed in ways I never thought possible. My mother and I have lunch together every week, slowly and carefully rebuilding our bond. She no longer seeks to compete with me, but to understand me. When we talk about design or business strategies, I can see a flicker of genuine pride in her eyes. Sophia has been the biggest surprise. After a period of deep self-reflection, she decided to go back to school to study social work. "I want to build something meaningful, on my own merit," she told me. Her transformation has been profound and authentic. My father has found an unexpected calling in the hotel's community outreach program, where he now mentors young entrepreneurs. He says that teaching them what he has learned, especially from his own mistakes, gives him a sense of purpose that money and status never could. It took Marco 6 months to contact me again. When he finally did, it was not to ask for a handout, but to ask for a job. He now manages the hotel's expansion projects, and his ambition, when channeled constructively, is proving to be a remarkable asset. Room 108, the small, noisy room they put me in on that first day, has been converted into a small museum dedicated to the history of the hotel and its founder. At the end of the exhibit, visitors can see a framed copy of Grandfather's letter, a permanent reminder that a family legacy is about values, not just valuables. Every day, as I walk the halls of this hotel that is both my inheritance and my responsibility, I feel my grandfather's presence guiding me. I chose to reveal my secret not for revenge, but for the possibility of redemption. And while the journey has not been easy, the family we are building now is stronger, more honest, and more real than the one we ever pretended to be. As the plaque at the hotel entrance now reads, "We don't build walls, we build bridges." We don't offer rooms, we offer a home. That is the true secret of the Hotel Miramar, and the greatest legacy my grandfather left me.